Good morning from the gritty streets of New York City.
Hey, speaking of well, thank you. Speaking of the Russia in your jingle, were you surprised to know that a Russian oligarch was connected to George Santos? That's where he got some of his funding? You were shocked.
No, I'm not surprised, especially since he starred in Dr. Zhivago.
Yeah.
And actually wrote Anna Karenina.
Did he?
And that Joseph Stalin was his stepfather.
Oh, it makes perfect sense.
That's funny.
Yeah, it's all there.
You posted on Twitter, listen to this audio as the official Ukrainian Liberation Negro. Is that what your title is? How the F am I still fighting and beating Russians on all fronts while I'm on leave in the USA? Man, listen to these Russian guys here. They fear me and the Poles. What is all this about?
Yeah, there's a cut of audio that the Ukrainian intelligence service that I used to work for, GUR, intercepted a telephone call where a father and a son are talking, and they're talking about how all the Poles are doing all the fighting in Ukraine, and that the Ukrainians just sort of hang back, and that the Russians are still taking these losses because of the Poles and the black guys who speak English. And we all know who that is, right? Because as you guys might remember, throughout all September, Russian state TV put video of me as the black guy who speaks English, the scary NATO officer. And now they're still talking about it. It's reached down to the dad and son level.
I'm glad you trademarked that. You actually said official Ukrainian Liberation Negro trademark.
Trademark.
Okay, so that's... Malcolm, speaking of, you just mentioned Gretchen Whitmer. I was just talking about Jim Jordan, who leads the House Judiciary. One of his, and is going to have this, what do they call it, Travis, panel about, like government extreme, whatever. It's a bunch of conspiracy theories about the FBI.
Yeah.
One of his is that the Gretchen Whitmer was an FBI setup. It was not a real plot. It was entrapment. I mean, this is who you have running the committees in Congress now.
Yeah, and I was talking to Travis a little earlier. You guys know I have a Substack, malcolmnance.substack.com.
Yep.
I have a new article coming out later today, probably, this evening once I get it scrubbed. And you know what the title is? What you are going to suffer for the next 2 years. And that's the 116th Congress is the equivalent to drunk dancing monkeys with machine guns.
Yeah.
And they are just going to spray and spray, whether it's inciting their fellow insurrectionists to acts of terrorism or throwing the poop as they're wont to do in every direction. This is going to be the chaos caucus, the mayhem caucus. And guys like Jim Jordan, who's going to use the judiciary to block the investigation and the implementation of law. The only thing I can say that the Democrats need to do here is that they need to get on those committees, get the biggest firebrands that we got, and then call out these committees for exactly what they want.
Yes,
and
don't make Kevin McCarthy's mistake. Right. Get on those committees.
Get on those committees and get up there and go, this is a sham. You hate the FBI because they're investigating the criminals that run your party. George Santos or whatever his name is this week, Anthony whatever, right? These things are serious. And if we have a very serious incident, if we have a critical incident somewhere where this happens and the FBI is not there, or they start their lead for the defund the FBI program, get up there and call it that and make them eat every word.
So I wanted to, I mentioned this story. January 6th committee failed to hold social media accountable for ignoring extremism. So the memo, it was a 122-page memo. Congressional investigators found evidence that tech platforms, especially Twitter, failed to heed their own employees' warnings about violent rhetoric on their platforms, bent their rules to avoid penalizing conservatives, particularly then President Trump, out of fear of reprisals. The draft report details how most platforms did not take dramatic steps to rein in extremist content until after the attack on the Capitol, despite clear red flags across the internet. January 6th committee staffers wrote in a memo that alt-tech, fringe, and mainstream platforms were exploited in tandem by right-wing activists to bring American democracy to the brink of ruin. These platforms enabled the mobilization of extremists on a smaller scale and whipped up conservative grievance on larger, more mainstream ones. But the absence of those findings in the final report, the J6 report, showed a missed opportunity to hold tech companies accountable, even though the platforms had been the subject of intense scrutiny since Trump's first presidential campaign in 2016, which you've read about in all of Malcolm Nance's books, FYI.
Yes.
Given the amount of material they actually ultimately got from the big social media companies, I think it's unfortunate we didn't get a better picture of how Stop the Steal was organized online and how material spread, said one expert. I get that the J6 committee can't, cover everything, Malcolm, but that's a pretty big deal, right?
Yeah, it's a very big deal. And what you're looking at, again, is something we already knew since 2016, the re-engineering of social media into weapon systems, to where they are using not just the information that's injected into the propaganda stream, but the mechanism of how that information gets in there, right? And what they understood was, if you complain about liberals, they'll pull it. And the information that's very obvious out there, that extremists were using this platform to coordinate, to cooperate. I wrote about it. I used to put out tweets. If you remember those tweets I put out in all caps, warning, right? And we would talk about how these guys were planning, acts of extremism, and which eventually came out to my prediction that there would be an insurgency or an insurrection. Yeah. The point is, these people, these extremists, like ISIS, like Al-Qaeda did before them, they engineer the way their information gets out there.
Remember how they used to call us all conspiracy theorists, Malcolm, about Russia?
Yeah.
Yeah. So here is Rudy Giuliani about, I'm not even entirely certain, he invents conspiracy theory linking Mar-a-Lago search to the Biden documents, something, FBI. Hang on, let's listen.
In the case of Trump, he took them, but in a process in which they were always known to and available to the government.
What?
And the government could go there and make recommendations as to their security that had to be accepted if he wanted to continue to go through them. So it's two very different things. I believe they created it as a raid in order to make it look criminal because they knew they had a problem with Biden. Now,
what?
Okay, stop.
Okay, go ahead.
Top secret training time.
Okay, here we go.
All right. I only handled these documents for 3 decades. Okay? It's simple. When those documents are produced or replicated anywhere, all right, in many instances, there's a little code in the paper or on the document itself, and they can be tracked. One of the differences of what's going on here is there are different types of documents. There are actual documents that are designed, written, stamped top and bottom, top secret, secret, confidential, SCI, all of those things. And then there are those which are policy documents which may have information in them, and they read like an article from the New York Times, and they may have the letter C or the letter S on a paragraph. Donald Trump's documents were all in folders with giant honking red letters across them that said secret SCI, top secret SCI. Even worse, HCS, human control system, which is where real names of CIA officers are used. He stole those documents. He had people go and draw those documents from sensitive compartmented information facilities. Those documents were noted as missing. He had 300 documents, but you know what else they had? 600 empty folders, which means someone may have destroyed as many as 600 secret, confidential, and top secret documents. Joe Biden's staff found a couple of documents which had paragraph markings. Let's find out. But you know what? There's differences when you steal them versus them accidentally getting packed.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'll bet you if we check George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Jimmy Carter, Richard Nixon, we're going to find boatloads of little minor things. There's a big difference between the intent. Trump was taking those things to sell weapons to Saudi Arabia based on what little we know, or to humiliate people and intimidate them. with secrets that he had in his pocket.
Yes, which is yes, Travis.
Well,
It didn't belong to him.
Mm-hmm. It's also worth pointing out. Really, this is like their new talking point: is that the National Archives knew where the documents were. That's why they got the security footage, because they saw that they were moving them around and they were not keeping them in the stored place where they were supposed to be.
Wait, you got to hear part 2 of Rudy's conspiracy theory.
Right.
Here we go. Yeah, hold on. Here we go. Oh, on Steve Bannon's show.
We don't know how many more records are here and there. So I don't understand how they justify at all not searching him. It's outrageous. But this is a setup. It was a setup to try to offset what they knew would eventually come out. And it has no defense.
I'm sorry, Travis, can you explain this conspiracy? This was a setup by the FBI?
The
because
FBI
they already
knew that FBI knew that Biden had these documents because of Minority Reports, and they were doing the raid on Mar-a-Lago to make it look criminal for Donald Trump versus what Biden did.
Okay, only Steve Bannon can bring this home. Hold on, Malcolm. Let's get your...
All right.
Okay.
Ho. Slow down. You're saying 8 August, the jackbooted FBI with all the media, all that. You're saying the jackbooted FBI raid on 8 August at Mar-a-Lago was a setup to cover themselves on this? Is that what you're saying? Did I hear you correctly?
Around Biden have to know that he had this classified material. How many times did they pass it in the garage? It's right there. It's sitting right there. How many times did Hunter pass it? With his Chinese girlfriend spy or his Russian girlfriend spy.
What?
I don't know. But a lot of people knew about it.
Oh, my God.
So the chances that this would come out were pretty darn strong.
Okay, Malcolm, wow. Would this be Russian disinformation? Is that what they call it in Russia? Disinformation?
Informatia. This is insane. The reason that they raided Mar-a-Lago is they knew what those documents are. These are documents that were heavily controlled and apparently were stolen from the SCIF, the Sensitive Compartmented Information Facility, or were drawn out by guys like Kash Patel, who took them and never returned them, and the document control numbers showed documents missing, right?
Yeah.
That is the big difference here. And then when they said, where are the documents? They said, we don't have any documents. They go, yeah, you do. They're right over here. No, they're not here. Let's move them. Criminal intent. The last guy I saw do this was a guy who sold secrets to Russia for $36,000. He stole documents from NSA. Oh, I'm sorry. No. Edward Snowden. He's the guy that I'm thinking about. And he gave those documents up for nothing.
Can I just sum up?
Saying here.
Can I sum up today's Republican Party? Some right-wing activist spoke at a Miami-Dade meeting and just said, long live Trump, long live Putin, long live DeSantis. I mean, they are...
Oh, my God.
They're the party of Putin. I mean, I don't know what to say anymore.
They all work for Moscow. And you know what? Here's your warning order. After all of you subscribe to my malcolmnance.substack.com, all right, your job is every time you hear a lie, you have to say, this is a lie. Yeah. Don't discuss it. Don't debate it. Just call it out from this point onward.
Yep. All right. Love you, Malcolm Nance. A grateful nation.
Love
Thanks
y'all.
you. Be careful on the street there. You're making me nervous. Okay, goodbye.